Welcome back. In today's video, we are going to learn about one of the most important concepts in Hive, that is partitioning. It is also one of the optimization techniques in Hive. So let us understand this partitioning with one example. Consider you have a table called sales table. So in this sales table, you have 5 years of data. That is, you have millions and billions of rows in this data. And this table contains 3 columns: order ID, amount and country. So you have numerous data for each of the countries. Like if you have 100 of countries, you would have data for 100 of countries present over here. So Hive stores data in a folder structure. So how would the folder structure for table look like? This folder structure would look like this. And how would the data look under it? The data would look like this. There would be number of part files created in this. And if we consider this, any country would be stored in any of the part files. Like India would be in part 0, in 2, 3 or 100th part file also. Imagine if you want to run the query where you have to select all the columns from the country only India. What happens in that case? Hive would go to this sales table folder and it would scan all the part files, and doing this would take a lot of time. Sometimes the query would not return the results, or the query would run indefinitely. So in this case, what is helpful is partitioning. So what is partitioning? Partitioning is dividing the huge table into smaller organized folder based on column values. That is, if the sales table, it would have been partitioned by country. I would write over here country. Consider now the sales table is partitioned by country. In this case, what does the folder structure would look like? It would look like this. Under the sales table, we would have subfolders under it for each of the country. Consider now we have for country India, and whenever I would read the same query again with the partition table, then in this case Hive only scans the data from the sales table folder, and under it would go only to the subdirectory folder, that is India, and the query would be faster and I would get the results faster. So this is what partitioning is. In partitioning also there are two types of partitioning, that is static partitioning and dynamic partitioning. So let us look at static partitioning. Whenever you are creating a table with a partition column country, in that case, if the table is created as a static partitioning, at that time what happens is whenever you are inserting some data into it, you have to mention the column name and you have to mention the data of that column. Consider for country, I have to mention India over here. In this case, there is only one folder created, that is for country India. There would be no other folders created for US or UK, and I would be inserting only the data for country India. And how would the data look like? The data would look like this. That is, the sales table folder would be created, under it the subfolder would be created, and under the subfolder India there would be data for only India, that is some part files would be created over here. So if I enable the dynamic partitioning in Hive, what would it do? In that case, whenever I do insert, I don't have to mention the data over here. I just have to mention the column over here, column name over here. Whenever I just do the column name over here, what Hive does is it would look into the data that I am inserting. It would read the data which is present in the country column, and whenever it reads the data in the country column, it would create the folders for each of the country. So how would the data look in dynamic partitioning? It would create country India, country US. It would create the subfolders for all the countries that are present. And how would the data look inside the subfolder? Under the sales table, the data would look under India, India data would be present, under US, US data, and under UK you would find some UK data. So let's look at this partitioning with some hands-on example. So now whenever I want to create a table, now I'm creating the same sales table, but I'll be doing partition. So I'll be considering partitioning by the column country. So I'll create this data. So table is created over here. I'll just go to my terminal and I'll show you how does this table looks like. Now only the table is created, so I would just show how the table looks like. Okay, it should be actually, let us go, it should be actually training demo.db. So in this file, if you see, let me clear this. Let us go to our HDFS path over here. So I have created a table called training demo. Under training demo, there is a sales table. So let's look at the table. So we have this training demo db. So I have to go to training underscore demo dot db. So in training demo I have 3 tables, but we have now created the sales table. So I'll go into the sales table directory. So if you see in the sales table, there is no data still, but the folder structure have been created like shown. Now, if I want to create or insert some data into the sales table. Now first let us look at how the static partition data would look. Now in static partitioning, I have to mention the country and the data for it. And I want to enter the data only for India. So what I'll do is I'll insert the data for country India. Now let us look at this data. So under sales table directory, a subdirectory is created over here, and this subdirectory consists of country India, and the data that is present over here would be created as part files in this subdirectory. Let us look at it. So one of the part file is created over here. So if I want to query only for India, it would go to this subdirectory and only read the part files present in this folder. Now let us look how the dynamic partitioning would do. To create a dynamic partition, you have to enable dynamic partition in Hive. So you have to run this command where you have to set the dynamic partitioning true. Now for the same table, I'll be inserting some data, but in this dynamic partitioning, I'll be not inserting the data for the column country. So I'll only mention partition by column. Let me insert into the same table. Now the data is inserted. Let me see how the table structure would look over here. So I'll go back and I'll just read from the sales table folder. If you see, there are 3 subfolders created for each of the country, that is country India, country US and country UK. So what happens in dynamic partitioning is Hive got to know that partitioning is based on the column country. So it goes and it checks what data is present in the country column. So it finds out the unique data in the country column and it creates the folders based on it. Alright, so let us see what is the pros and cons of static partitioning and dynamic partitioning. In static partitioning, the inserts are faster because we are only inserting for one of the partition. We do not insert for multiple partition. We have full control on data placement, like we know at which subfolder, like which, if because we have considered for India, so we know which folder we have to place the data. there will be fewer partitions because we will only insert. Now consider for the sales table I would have only data for some of the columns, so I'll insert only for some of the columns. I would not insert it for all the columns. Some of the cons are like there is a manual effort, like you have to mention the data each time. It is not flexible and only one insert per partition can be done. In dynamic partition, it is very flexible. In only in one query, many partitions can be written over there. Less manual work because you don't have to mention each of the partition every time. Obviously, in cons, it would be slower because it has to read all the partitions. Also, too many partition risk and small file problems. So consider if you have thousands of unique data in your country column, it would have created thousands of subfolders. Not thousand but many of it, like millions. Then it would create all the small folders for it, and it would create a small file problem. This small file problem would cause hectic to the name node because name node has to store all the metadata for it. So this is a Hadoop concept, but this would be very problematic. The query would also slow down in some of the cases if there is a small file problem. Alright, so we have looked at what is static versus partitioning. In the next video, we'll be learning about bucketing with some of the hands-on examples. Thank you.